I'm not trying to say that this is a good or a bad thing, or that companies are right or wrong for doing this or not doing this. But this is nonetheless an observation. It's just an observation I've made over the last probably few years. And some of these are things that I think may have influenced this observation as to why or why not you really don't see patriotism as a theme in airsoft overall. Coming from the firearms world, one of the biggest gaps I saw between firearms and airsoft, as far as the customer community, as far as the shooting community, as far as the way some businesses maybe marketed products or just sort of operated, just their overall theme for being, I guess, was the in airsoft. There's this almost complete absence of patriotism. You watch a gun commercial or some piece of marketing, or you participate in some sort of activity that an organization is putting on, and there's almost always some connection with how the firearm connects to our national heritage as Americans. Really, you usually see this more with rifles, because I think because the rifle has been, well, also, okay, we can also say the rifle slash musket if we want to go crazy, because the musket before the rifle and then later the rifle was used in early American battles, specifically the war that made this country what it is, the Revolutionary War. So you see a lot of sort of throwback discussions or lectures about, like, hey, thanks for coming out to this rifle event or the shooting competition, and some insert piece of Revolutionary War history here, or insert piece of American military history here. There's groups like the Appleseed Project that exists specifically to teach shooters about rifle marksmanship, not pistol marksmanship, rifle marksmanship, and American history. You should check out the Appleseed Project because it's pretty neat. I'm going to try and go in September when they come back up to Sacramento. It's a pretty neat program. I've never had a chance to go, but I really want to check it out because I kind of want to steal some of their ideas. I'll talk about that in a different video. You don't really see this in airsoft. You damn sure don't see it in the manufacturing and sales, but I think a small part of that is because airsoft as a whole, at least from the production and the manufacturing standpoint, isn't really American in the first place. It's all overseas in various locations in Asia. Almost everything from the airsoft industry comes from China, Japan, Hong Kong, Japan, I already said Japan, and Taiwan. So you can have the most immersive modern Army Ranger kit you can find, down to the, oh, I got this scroll or this tab off of a guy that was in a Ranger platoon, this, that, and the other. But everything involved in the M4 rifle you're holding was probably made somewhere overseas. I'm willing to bet no aspect of that rifle was made in America. Even with that being said, I really don't think that's a huge part of the lack of patriotism. I think it's a very small part, because most of the companies, at least that I'm aware of, that I've been involved with, have veterans on the payroll. They've had veterans on the payroll at some of the highest levels of their company. Charlie with G&G was a Marine, I believe. Thomas with KWA was in the Navy, and those guys are as patriotic as it gets. I don't really believe that's a huge part of it. It might be a very small piece, because so much of what happens with what we see isn't really influenced necessarily by the overseas companies back in the various Asian countries. For example, Tom, the KWA marketing director, is a genius and basically does all the marketing for KWA. And to my knowledge, he's never really had to do anything with the big corporate office as far as the marketing. Usually the overseas head offices, the corporate offices, have direct influence over what guns will be made and how they will be made, and like the manufacturing aspect. But as far as the marketing and what the customer, the player sees, that's on the company, and those companies are based out of LA. There could be a point to be made that since most airsofters are like teens to early to mid 20s, They might not have necessarily been brought up with the same sense of patriotism as their parents, which are usually my age or older, because I was raised in basically an early post 9/11 world. I was a sophomore in high school during the 9/11 attacks, and I can remember in the months and years following the 9/11 attacks, and even into the first several years of the Iraq and Afghanistan invasions, there was this overwhelming sense of American patriotism that I hadn't recalled seeing pre 9/11. I personally don't see that much patriotism in some of the younger generations of players, or just in some of the younger generations of Americans as it is. I'm sure there are a number of different arguments for and against that, but that is simply an observation that I have personally made over the last 6 years. I see patriotism the most at fields and events. I personally always try to make sure the flag is being flown at my field when I'm there. CQB City in Stockton, to my knowledge, since they've existed, has always started their day with the national anthem. And there's even an event company called American Milsim. Keep in mind that I'm a military veteran. Chief is a military veteran, which is the gentleman that owns and runs CQB City. Bo, with American Milsim, is a military veteran. So maybe our minds are a little different than non-veteran, non-military veteran event promoters. But even then, I doubt that, because if you look at the dudes that run All Patriot Airsoft in Galt, none of those guys were in the military. They're all just happy dads. I was asked this question some time ago, that if I could only pick one airsoft gun to use forever, what would it be? For me, it's a GBBR, and I'm not going to say which one specifically because it doesn't matter to me as much as the reason. I'm an American. I'm a damn proud American, as red-blooded as it gets. I love my country. I gave years of my life, sacrificed time with my family, sacrificed long-term relationships with really hot single moms to serve my country. The rifle, to me, embodies the spirit of the American rifleman, which is the spirit of a person who knew in order to make it on their own and live the life that they wanted to create and live for themselves, they had to cut it out of the wilderness and fend for themselves. It's the spirit of the person who is not afraid to use that rifle to protect what was theirs and to help their neighbor do the same. I'm reminded of that spirit every time I pick up a rifle, more so when I'm handling an M4 because of my time in the Army. When I pick up a rifle, it reminds me to continue to be an American, to live an honest life, to love everyone, to understand everyone, to accept everyone, all thoughts, ideals, all ways of life, everything. To me, the rifle reinforces and reemphasizes and reminds me of my duty as an American to not be a dickbag. That being said, check out the new KW.
Caber, who the f*** are you, nerd?